Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming back. Welcome to the Mindful Academy. I'm Jennifer Askey. I'm a coach for academics. And this is, I believe, episode 14 of the podcast and the first episode of the video cast that I am also uploading to YouTube. And the topic for today is resistance. The resistance you feel come between you and that project that you really want to finish. And today I'm going to talk about what resistance is, why it shows up, and some strategies backed by research that can help you deal with resistance when it comes up and bites you. So why does resistance show up? Why do you feel resistance towards the work that you have actually set for yourself? Right? I'm an entrepreneur. I kind of set my own agenda. If you're a faculty member, you kind of set your own agenda in terms of creative work and research and all of that. And so it's your own goal, and yet you resist doing it. Why is that? So the first theory, it's valid, is this is your inner critic doing an excellent job. This is your inner critic hard at work, okay? Your inner critic is that voice inside your head that tells you everything is going to end in flames. Everything is going to end horribly wrong. Catastrophe is just around the corner. This is the voice in your head that wants to protect you from what seems like risk. The inner critic highlights all of the possibilities that are negative in the outcome of the work that you want to undertake. So there is going to be shame and ridicule. You are not going to be up to the job. You never were up to the job in the first place. Nobody is going to like it. It is going to be way too hard. It won't be perfect. It's easy for other people. It's not easy for you. Do I have them all? Probably not. Well, there's probably more, right? Ooh, that thing over there is more interesting than this thing I've told myself I'm going to do, right? There are a million ways to resist the work. So what's the deal with this inner critic? And it's loud, persistent, let me tell you all about it and how you stink voice. So the inner critic is supported by a couple things. First of all, there's our innate human negativity bias, okay? Developmentally and evolutionarily, it was at one point in time incredibly important for us to know that the rustling in the bush meant snake, or the rustling in the bush meant tiger. That meant things like, if you touch that lever, you get zapped. These are experiments we still conduct, or people have conducted on animals, right? Bad things happening to us get reinforced very, very easily. The animal, be it human or rodent, learns really quickly to not touch the thing that's going to zap them. And so if you've ever had a negative experience in your life, if you have ever been rejected or critiqued in your life, which you have because you're human, you will remember that and you will hold on to it really tightly. It's a self-protection mechanism, and those negative experiences, they shine with the power of 1,000 suns. Positive experiences, on the other hand, all of the times that you have succeeded, all of the times when you have set a goal for yourself and hit it, all of the times when you got positive feedback, you got the A, you got the job, you got the pat on the back, you got the gold star, we don't hold on to those as tightly. Especially if you are an ambitious person for whom success is just what is expected in the world. Success is the mere minimum bar to clear. Then every time you succeed, you're just doing your job. You're not succeeding, right? It's nothing positive to hold on to. Whereas the times that you fail, fall short of the mark, like all of those things loom much larger in our memory. And this negativity bias is common to all humans. And there's psychological research that shows that for every negative experience in an arena, so let's say every negative encounter with a colleague or a partner, every negative bit of feedback on work needs to be counteracted with 3 to 5 positive encounters, feedback moments, in order to even come close to balancing out, because we hold on to the negative so strongly. So your inner critic, like he or she is the shepherd and the curator of all of the negative things that have ever happened in your life, and can probably play them out for you on a movie, reminding you of the risk that you undertake when you put yourself out there. And the inner critic is quite good at that. So the nature of our inner critic is, an inner critic is my word. If we're thinking sort of Freudian or Jungian, we could think in Freud's framework, we might think of our inner critic as maybe having the voice of the superego, right? The societal control that gets superimposed upon our id and our ego. If you're thinking Jungian, you can think of sort of the shadow side, the negative animus that dwells within all of us. So it's super, super human. But the lovely thing is that we have not only this inner critic that lives in our limbic brain in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response that is propelled by fear and is common to us all. Not only do we have that capability, we also have our left dorsal prefrontal cortex, which is capable of goal setting and long range planning and values alignment and other things. So we can balance it out, and I'll get there in a minute. But the nature of your inner critic is not the same as my inner critic. Your inner critic might say different things than mine, might be motivated slightly different than mine. A framework that I work with my clients sometimes is called positive intelligence. It's a 6-week mindfulness-based productivity and self-improvement program. And one of the things I like about the program is it begins with you taking an assessment of the flavor of your inner critic. So in positive intelligence, they call your inner critic the judge, and the judge has 9 accomplice saboteurs. And if you've listened to earlier episodes of the podcast back in season 1, I talk a bit about the accomplice saboteurs. And they are, if I can remember them all in alphabetical order, your inner critic may show up avoiding. So the avoider saboteur, the controller saboteur, the hyper-achieving saboteur, the hyper-rational saboteur, no emotions here, the hyper-vigilant saboteur, waiting for the other shoe to drop, the pleaser saboteur, the restless, right, bouncing from one thing to the other, the stickler, and the victim. So these are sort of the 9 big buckets of inner critic behavior and valence that positive intelligence assigns. And I think they're super, super useful to work with because it helps you realize, aha, my default self-sabotaging, getting in my own way behavior frequently looks like this. Like in academia, a lot of the people I work with have hyperachieving saboteurs, right? If it isn't universally accepted as the best thing ever, it is an abject failure, right? I know a lot of people have controlling saboteurs, right? Where uncertainty of outcome is incredibly stress producing, right? So that's important to think about. If you're socialized as a woman, anytime in the last millennium or so, you probably have at least the invitation to entertain a pleaser saboteur where you are only safe and loved and good if you are pleasing other people. My own saboteur assessment from positive intelligence shows victim up there pretty high, where why is it so hard for me and so easy for them? Why does it always happen to me and everybody else is lucky, right? These are the sort of the inner monologue that accompanies you in maybe your not best moments. So what's important to recognize about your inner critic as a way of being resistance, of manifesting resistance for you, is that the voice of your inner critic telling you it isn't going to be good enough, nobody's going to like it, you suck, something else is more interesting, it's going to be too hard, whatever the story fueled by your inner critic and your saboteurs is, that story is fueled by fear, shame, guilt, deficiency, like a very, very keen awareness of the gap between what's possible and where you are now, right? And only awareness of the gap. No awareness of possibility, just awareness of deficiency. And all of these things, fear, shame, guilt, deficiency, they masquerade really effectively as protection. Right? So you're feeling resistance to writing the book, to tackling the revisions, to putting yourself out there, to applying for the fellowship, the grant, the job. And it feels like, oh, it's safer to not do this, because in doing it, in putting myself out there, in making my work public, I expose myself to ridicule. Humiliations galore, right? As the Dread Pirate Roberts / farm boy Wesley once said in a movie. And so keeping ourselves from exposure to humiliations galore seems like the safe thing to do. But this fear, guilt, shame driven response that leads to resistance, it, it reifies itself, right? Taking the shape, the mental shape, the spiritual shape, even the physical shape of that fear and resistance, and using the fear and resistance and saying, oh yeah, this is going to be hard. This is, I'm really going to be putting myself out there to write that book. I'm really risking ridicule and humiliation to do this. And so, of course, it's just going to be so hard, and it's an incredibly steep hill to climb. Maybe I'll never get there. What you're doing there is creating the conditions where that's going to come to pass, because you're not focused on possibility, you're not focused on creativity, you're not focused on curiosity, you're not empathetic with yourself, with the world, with others. You're not thinking about the values that propel you towards action, right? The values that align with your work and would inspire you to action. So just recognizing that everybody has the voice of an inner critic. It may have different flavors, valences, tones, but we all have 1 or 2 or 12. And the inner critic is motivated by fear. It's motivated by risk avoidance. And because of negativity bias, it takes maybe the real risk that's tiny and blows it up into just epic, epic, epic proportions. So you're not alone in experiencing it. Now, some people's inner critics are far louder than other people's inner critics, and we'll get to maybe how to turn the volume down on yours. But I want to talk about the second way of thinking about your resistance that comes less from psychology and more from people who investigate creative practices. And here I'm thinking about the work of Pressfield, Stephen Pressfield. The War of Art is a short book that he wrote that you may have heard of. And then an online creator that used to actively run and now sort of passively runs a site called The Fluent Self. Her name is Hobby Brooks. And they say things that are sort of similar about this big thing around which you might be feeling resistance. So in The War of Art, Pressfield says, resistance is the path. That thing that you are feeling the most resistance about, the bigger the resistance, the more you dread it, the stronger that is, the stronger of an indicator, the stronger I'm having grammatical difficulties here. The more strongly that indicates that that thing is a major step on your path towards growth. Creative growth, personal growth, breakthrough of some sort. So the hint there is where it is scary, where there be dragons, right? That your job is to find the dragon and fight it. So this is a very hero's journey concept of where you feel resistance. And now that I have said that, I'm going to reach over here into my drawer where I have some notebooks, because I was just looking yesterday for a client at some material from Brene Brown's Dare to Lead program. Pardon the page turning. Let me see if I can re-find what I found yesterday, because I do believe there is a Joseph Campbell quote in here, probably closer towards the beginning, about the cave, right? The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek, right? So there's Joseph Campbell for you, the hero's journey. So where we feel resistance is a sign that there's growth there, there is possibility there, there is breakthrough there. And I'll offer as a coach that breakthrough in the cave, the thing about which we feel the strongest resistance, it can be a creative breakthrough. I finally did it. I finally wrote the words. I finally got the idea out there. Look at me. It can also be a really profound personal breakthrough where the person you are today, who hasn't entered the cave, who hasn't confronted the dragon, is a different person than the person who has confronted the dragon. And that the real transformation is in yourself, in your self-concept, in your ability to self-actualize. Who are you? Who do you become in the act of confronting that resistance? And that's, again, very heroic path. It's kind of overcoming yourself. And if that isn't sitting well with you, maybe you're not in an overcoming mood today, and that's fine. You don't have to be in an overcoming mood every day. I'll offer, from the Fluent Self, Javi's take on this. She once wrote that the thing around which you feel the most resistance, of course you do, because that is your precious, sweet thing. It is your little, sweet, precious baby bird. And it deserves nourishing and protecting from the slings and arrows of the world. And so it makes sense that you want to protect your sweet, sweet, delicate baby bird. However, delicate baby birds, like they don't get up to much. And just as the delicate baby bird grows more robust, learns how to feed itself, and leaves the nest eventually, so too, the things about which you care deeply cannot remain sheltered and protected forever if they're going to find reception, if they're going to leave the nest and enter the world and enter into the circulation of ideas. So, and that's sort of a gentler way of growing your project up or growing yourself to be able to let the project out there. And as I'm saying this, I'm reminded that I'm thinking very much about creating things as I talk about resistance, thinking very much about, writing your book or article or applying for things, right? But I want to offer that this notion of resistance and what we step back from shows up in our professional work a whole bunch, but even more frequently shows up in resistance in our emotional intelligence interactions or interactions that require emotional intelligence. So maybe you're feeling resistance around a difficult conversation you have to have. Maybe you're feeling resistance around asking for something or setting a boundary, right? Those things are, they're even sneakier in a way than things about which we feel pretty confident in our professional chops, but are just hesitant. Because people things like, we don't have a PhD in people. I don't have a PhD in difficult conversations or managing grad students or being a department chair, right? And so thinking about the resistance that you might be feeling when it comes to difficult conversations, difficult engagements with human beings, disappointing people, asking for something, setting boundaries, and where your inner critic chimes in about that, right? Perhaps you are having arguments with people who aren't in the room and painting them as black as night as you can in their evil intentions so that you can feel justified in avoiding the conversation. Maybe you are wallowing in victim ideation when it comes to this confrontation, or you're taking the pleaser approach, or you want to control, right? All of the things that can show up around our creative work can also show up around our people work. And the same thing goes with the hero's journey, right? Where the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. You need to go fight the dragon, because just like writing the book and being proud of what you've written changes your self-concept as a scholar, your ability to have that difficult conversation with a colleague or a supervisor or a reviewer or whomever, or a student, your ability to do that also changes who you are and how effective you are able to be in the world. So desiring to protect yourself or protect other people in the guise of kindness is a falsity, right? It is the let me protect you from real world consequences. Let me protect you from ever feeling bad. But in the act of protecting you or me from feeling bad, I am creating all sorts of bad feelings out of thin air in order to hold on to them really tightly, right? So we use fear to motivate us to create more fear, right? It's a vicious fear cycle that doesn't really serve you as a person. It doesn't serve your own self-actualization. It doesn't serve your own ability to be effective in the world. So whether you're experiencing resistance around intellectual work, creative work, or around interacting with human beings and the difficult work of managing emotions and expectations, both of those likely point to a path of growth for you, right? Recognizing your inner critic for who and what it is, working on strategies to overcome that inner critic, overcoming it every once in a while, and then recognizing what you are capable of when all of your actions are not propelled by fear, shame, guilt. What if, right? So I want to switch a little bit to talking about strategies, but I'll sum up sort of what I've said about resistance so far. We all feel it. And we all feel it probably where there is something at stake, right? So, for example, if you're feeling resistance around having that difficult conversation or doing that writing that you need to be doing, so those two things maybe both fall into the bucket of work. So you're feeling guilty and shameful about not engaging in work. You may do something like answer email, because that also looks like work, but it doesn't feel as bad. There's less resistance around that for you. Or maybe like email is something you would really rather not do, and you have a great deal of resistance around that. So what do you do instead, right? Are you scrolling on social media? Are you grading papers? Are you donating time to other people? What are you doing to avoid, to resist the work that you yourself have said is part of your goal? So it's universal to all of us. It'll show up slightly different for everybody, but we all have this tendency. And there is great potential in confronting that resistance, recognizing it, being empathetic towards it, and working to overcome it. Because being steered by your resistance ends up feeling really crappy. Okay, so if you don't want to be steered by resistance, what can you do? So the first thing I want to acknowledge is I'm not sure it is possible to take all of those inner critic voices, all of the saboteurs, and chuck them out the window. They stay there. They're part of our makeup. What we can do is turn down the volume. So instead of being at full volume, we can turn it down to a 4. Some days maybe it's even a 2. And we recognize when it gets loud again and say, aha, there it is being loud again. That voice that tells me it's not going to go the way I want it to. I'm going to do the strategies I know to do in order to turn that volume down. So one of the research-backed methods for dealing with your inner critic is they are all related to mindfulness activities and meditation, but I can kind of break them down and differentiate them a bit, because this doesn't mean that in order to counter your inner critic, you have to go sit in a dark room for a half an hour with a singing bowl. If you want to, that's beautiful. We can talk about that too, but we can break it down into some discrete activities that you can do. The first is notice. Okay, simply take note of how often this resistance shows up and what it feels like, what it says, what the urge or lack of urge associated with it is. Is there a sentence in your mind that occurs every time you think about this conversation or this project? Or do you not even get to the point where you have the sentence in your mind, you just have that feeling in your gut, and so you shut the door and flee, right? Your first job is to notice. Now, if you are maybe you are familiar with a book, it's 30 years old at least, by a social worker named Rick Carson. Wrote a book called Taming Your Gremlin. And so instead of using inner critic or judge or saboteur, he uses the phrase gremlin. We all have a gremlin. And in his book, Taming Your Gremlin, this is one of the practices he recommends in the positive intelligence framework, from whence the saboteur assessment comes. Also talks about noticing. Buddhist techniques also talk about just noticing with no judgment. So awareness without judgment. So what noticing might look like for you is identifying the saboteur. One way to do, or inner critic, right? These are all sort of interchangeable terms for me right now. Inner critic, gremlin, saboteur, source of resistance, all the same thing right now. If you're interested in getting some nuance to noticing your inner critic, you can go to positiveintelligence.com/saboteurs. And that program there offers a free assessment that you can share with your coach. You can share it with me, Jennifer at jenniferaskey.com. I'd love to talk to you about what your saboteur assessment tells about you, because it takes these 9 flavors of saboteur: avoider, controller, hyperachiever, etc., and you answer some questions, and then it gives you from 0 to 10, like how loud that particular saboteur is in your inner mind. And so when it spits out this report for you and says, oh, you have avoider at like 8.5 and victim at 8, and but sticklers down there at 1 or at 0, it will tell you a little bit more information about your top 2 or 3 saboteurs. Like, okay, if you have the resistance saboteur or restless saboteur, it may be showing up like this. Does that sound familiar? And so then you can learn, aha, okay, this is a pattern. It's not just me. It's not the truth. It's a pattern. It's a default pattern. And I can notice it for that. Okay. So the other thing that I didn't say about the inner critic a few minutes ago is that this desire to prevent you from taking risks and to keep you safe and all of the things that the inner critic tells you, maybe it wasn't patently obvious from what I said earlier, but it's all a lie. Okay? The inner critic is not your friend. It's your dungeon master. It's not your friend. It's not there to lift you up and help you turn into the best version of yourself. Your inner critic is there to like turn the fear volume way up, put you really, really deep into your shell, and not let you bring any of your creative genius, your human empathy, and your delightful sparkle into the world. Okay? I wanted to make sure that was clear. So if the saboteur report is nice because it shows you what these patterns might look like, and that, for me anyway, helps in the noticing game. So if you want to notice how often your inner critic pipes up with a charming, charming insight, it might be helpful to give it a name, right? The work of Rick Carson, Naming Your Gremlin, he does give individual gremlins names. So, so-and-so, a client of his, a woman who had a really difficult time experiencing any kind of sexual closeness or intimacy, her gremlin they named Reverend Al Dried Up, right? There's a starving artist gremlin, there's the general gremlin, right? These stories that we have that we use to make sense of our experience, but that are very limiting and very fear-based. So it may help in the noticing game to give your inner critic and gremlin a name, whether that's the simple name of hyper-rational or a more creative name of the general or whatever. So noticing could look like a daily habit of reflection at the end of the day, where you sort of give yourself a score on a 0 to 10 scale of how frequently was I listening to my inner critic versus not listening to my inner critic. It could be a simple tally system. Every time you catch yourself listening to the inner monologue of the critic, just make a check mark, and then every couple days look and see how many check marks there are, so that you become aware of how pervasive that voice is. And that's really important, because it's hard to it's hard to work with something that we're unaware of, right? Um, the and that's sort of the first step in mindfulness, is being aware and not passing judgment, which is kind of hard because like, oh my gosh, I'm beating myself up so much. What's wrong with me? No, you can say, wow, I beat myself up a whole lot. And other people do too. Being human is hard. Being a grown-up is hard. Working on myself to be my best self is hard, right? That's the empathic response. So you want to be aware, and then you want to respond with empathy. You do not want to respond with even more criticism and judgment. So the opposite, so once you're noticing, right? This is how often my inner critic pops up. Once you notice that, we can practice anticipating it. Oh, my inner critic always shows up when this happens. How am I going to deal with that? To anticipate and practice. Practice a response. What's a better response? When my teenager gets on my last nerve ending, what's a better response than screaming? When I need to set a boundary with a coworker, and my first impulse is to withdraw and please, what's a more values aligned alternative, right? We want to practice those things. So what are your alternatives to listening to the inner critic? I'm going to talk a little bit about the positive intelligence framework again, because I really like the language there. I think it's very tactile and usable. So arrayed against the saboteurs, the avoider, the pleaser, the victim, the hyperachiever, right? The 9 saboteurs in that model, we have what Shirzad Shamin, the man who created the program, we have what he calls the sage powers. And I think of this as like your best self. What does your best self bring to the table? And your best self brings empathy, curiosity, creativity, values alignment, and action to the table. Kind of in that order, because my saboteur actually might want to bring action first. One of my saboteurs is super action focused. When in doubt, when you feel bad, do something. And I can actually hear my absolutely lovely, charming grandmother who helped raise me. I actually hear her in the back of my mind going, do something, Jennifer, even if it's wrong, implying that idleness is just the worst thing you could possibly be. Idle is the worst thing you could possibly be. So we don't start with action. We work through empathy, curiosity, creativity, and values alignment to get to action. So what does that mean, right? Empathy? All right. Empathy with self, we can call that self-compassion. Empathy with circumstances, the world is the way it is. And empathy with others, they are also suffering, right? Empathy is, I love the German word for empathy. It's to feel with. Right? It's recognizing that my pain, while it may be idiosyncratic to me, it is pain, and that is a universal experience. And so I can be empathic with you because I see your pain and I can see it in me, and I can see my pain and see it in you, right? Very Buddhist. And self-compassion is a big part of that, because it's so challenging to bring empathy to the circumstances or to bring empathy to other people when you are really busy judging yourself. Because that's basically saying, oh, I can be kind to those people, but I cannot be kind to myself, which kind of implies that maybe you think higher of yourself than other people because you are only good if you're perfect, and other people are good even if they're not, because they're not cut out to be perfect. I don't know. There's some weird psychological gamesmanship happening there that you don't want any part of. You want to start with self-compassion. I am a beautiful soul worthy of love and light just because I exist. And you want to practice giving that to other people once you have it pretty solidly for yourself. More resources for compassion, self-compassion, can be found at self-compassion.org. This is a website that features the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, who's an educational psychologist from the University of Texas at Austin and one of North America's premier researchers on self-compassion. I have probably mentioned her name before. She does really good work. She has a self-compassion quiz on that site. She has self-compassion meditations and workbooks and all sorts of things where you can really work with the big thing that counters the inner critic, which is self-compassion. Like that's your first line of defense, self-compassion. And then that allows you to be curious and creative, to think about your values and get in alignment with them when you take action. Okay, so we notice, we anticipate and practice, right? The next time my teenager triggers me and I want to strangle them, instead of screaming and strangling them, I will get curious. I will say, oh, that's interesting that you would ask me to do that. Can you tell me what your thought process is? Oh, that's interesting. What's going on there? Tell me more, right? Instead of making assumptions, instead of arguing in advance of the argument, right? You can probably imagine how this might go, but we cannot rely on behaving the way and feeling the way we want to, in the moment if we don't practice noticing it. Maybe we notice it after it happens for a while before we can start anticipating it. But we can learn to recognize the patterns of our inner critic. We can learn to recognize the patterns of self-sabotage, of lack of empathy, of judginess that show up in our own lives and contribute to how we relate to other people and relate to our work and relate to our circumstances. And once we practice noticing them and anticipating them, then maybe we get to the point where instead of yelling at the teenager and then having to apologize, we don't even get to the point where we're screaming our heads off because we've done enough practice. Now, maybe that is too lofty a goal most days. Your mileage may differ, but this process is a good one to engage in. Recognizing how your inner critic fuels thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that don't serve who you want to be in the world. Recognizing where that happens, when that happens, what's going on when that happens. And practicing, oh, okay, if I always get up in my head and all super judgy about me and the world and everybody else when I go to these meetings or when I sit down to work on this article or when I think about that encounter, what's triggering that and how might I use empathy or creativity or curiosity or my values to shift my behavior there, to shift my mindset there and take different action. Okay. So mindfulness as a broader strategy that begins with noticing is one of the research-backed ways that we know turns down the volume on the inner critic. And I'm going to give you sort of my layman's understanding of how this works. So in traditional mindfulness, or traditional meditation, where you are taught, whether you're using an app on your phone like Calm or Headspace, or the Healthy Minds app, or Balance, or Positive Intelligence, there's a whole bunch of them. The Insight Timer is a little bit different because it's sort of crowdsourced, but a lot of these things will teach you some basics of meditation. And maybe you're learning to sit with your spine erect and your feet on the ground or folded underneath you and your eyes closed, and maybe you count breaths or you do a body scan. But you're doing something, and maybe you're out walking. That, you can do moving meditations with your eyes open. You can focus on your sense of touch or sight or hearing or taste. What you're doing in all of these instances is aligning your mind, your heart, and your body in the same time and space. So instead of sitting in a meeting and you're physically there, but your mind is ruminating on some past mistake, or your mind is catastrophizing about some future horror, right? You're split. You're not integrated. And in the rumination and in the catastrophizing, your inner critic is in clover. Your inner critic is just fat and happy and wallowing around and living its best life. because it can point in the past to all of the ways things have gone wrong, or all of the ways you have been wronged and all of the horrible people in the world, or the future, right? It can fantasize, it can catastrophize, it can do anything, but it's not in the here and now. And the interesting thing about the here and now is if you are sitting in a meeting or alone in a room with a singing bowl, and your mind and your heart and your body are all in the same place, you are in a moment of possibility and choice, right? If you're ruminating on the past, can't change that. If you're catastrophizing about the future, can't change it yet. You can anticipate, you can plan, right? But you can't do future. You can only do present. So, what we recognize slowly but surely when we practice mindfulness is that in the moment we're okay, and in the moment we have choice. Right? I can't make tomorrow's choice today. I can make today's choice today, and tomorrow, if I'm in good practice, I will hopefully make the same aligned choice. But I can't act in advance, and I can't act in retrospect. I can't feel in advance or feel in retrospect. I was just talking to some clients about this notion of feeling in advance. Like if I protect myself now, then it won't hurt when it happens. It's like, oh, if I hurt myself now, then it won't hurt when it happens, but it's still going to hurt. So basically, I'm just doubling up on hurt, right? Like we don't get to borrow from the past or the future. We only get to act in the present. So what you learn when you sit in meditation or when you walk mindfully or wash the dishes mindfully, and you're concentrating on the present moment. So your physical sense of touch, your physical sight, your hearing, counting your breaths, feeling your body, right? This is the way we get in touch with the present moment, is by anchoring in our senses. And you're paying attention to that, you will notice that your mind is going to offer up some thoughts. Laundry lists of things to do, your to-do list, all of the action you should be taking. It's going to offer up all sorts of insights from the inner critic about why this is stupid, about maybe it'll start regretting. You will be offered thoughts of regret about things past, or sorrow about things past, what ifs. Maybe you will be offered fantasies about the future, if only, right? Or maybe you will be offered catastrophe visions of the future, what ifs. And what I've noticed after practicing meditation for quite a while is that, oh, okay, this is the default pattern of my inner critic. My inner critic isn't much of a ruminator, doesn't pay a whole lot of attention to the past, but my inner critic has all sorts of stories about the future. And some of them are catastrophic and some of them are idyllic, but it's always future focused and always action focused, which means that I'm not content in the moment if I follow that line of thinking. And it also means that it kind of saps my energy for possibility in the moment, because it's always around the next corner. It will be okay if only this happens, right? So then I engage with luck and maybe trying to make bargains with God, or right? So what you get to do when you are mindfully aware of yourself and your surroundings in the moment, and your mind offers up an ongoing narrative of thoughts that you're not supposed to grab onto and follow to their conclusion. You're supposed to recognize them and go, oh, look, it's a thought, and sort of pop it like a bubble. You will notice what thoughts keep coming up over and over again. And it's another way of saying like, aha, here's the inner critic, hard at work. Look at all of the things it is offering up to me. And through recognizing the tricks and the color of your inner critic's hair, the sound of their voice, and the tricks they play, you are more easily able to turn down the volume on how loud they are in your life. Because you'll recognize, like, it doesn't matter if it's Tuesday morning and I'm feeling fit and frisky and I'm going to sit for 5 minutes before I start my day, or it's Thursday afternoon and it's -20 and blowing horizontal snow and I'm out for a walk, but I'm going to do it mindfully. You'll notice, like, it doesn't really matter what your surroundings are or where you're at. Your inner critic always has the same bullshit story. And it's not true. Right? Because you are capable of having difficult conversations. You are capable of putting your work out there. But regardless of what you're actually doing, the inner critic is just going to tell you the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. So of course you feel resistance. So what are you going to do? Right? You become aware. You notice how often this chimes in, and you say, aha, that is actually not facts. The story that my inner critic tells me is not really the truth. I could make it true by acting upon it and acting in accordance with it, or I can say, that's an interesting theory. Thank you so much, inner critic, for trying to prevent me from experiencing any kind of potential hurt or risk. However, I'm a grown-ass adult and I have a prefrontal cortex and I have goals and I have values and there's work I want to do in the world. And so I'm going to very politely ignore you, tell you you lie, and go do my thing. I'm going to go slay the dragon, as it were. And if that feels too martial for you, don't think of it as dragon slaying, right? You're going to get in line with your values, you're going to get in touch with your creativity and curiosity and say, how is this good? Who's my warm and enthusiastic audience, right? Find that thing, that positive thing that you can believe for 10 seconds and hold on to that instead of the negative thing that's there over and over and over again that seems really easy to believe, right? We can create the positive by holding on to it and acting on it, just as we can create the negative by holding on to it and acting upon it. So this is mental fitness in the game of overcoming resistance. And I think that Stephen Pressfield and Javi Brooks and Joseph Campbell, they're all onto something. Like, we resist the thing that we care about deeply, right? I have so many clients that have a book project that weighs heavily on them. And look at me, I'm talking about my clients, right? I have a book project. And it's just sort of off in the distance, dangling, kind of sparkly out there. And I resist it because I'm human. But whether it's because you have a deadline, whether it's because you feel like your career needs this, whether it's because you feel like you have a message that you really need to share with the world, at some point you will want to get it out there. And it will be important enough for you to become the person who doesn't let resistance and the inner critic lead them around by their nose. You become the person who recognizes that sometimes growth and growing into the version of yourself that sets the boundary, has the hard conversation, writes the thing, puts it out there, becoming that person is important and is worth the slight discomfort and feelings that you will have along the way. But if you have the tools of recognizing, aha, 'tis a feeling, 'tis not necessarily the truth, right? I may feel like I am at risk, but actually I am going to be okay. Because if somebody does not like me or does not like my work, I will not die. There are people out there right now that don't like you. There are people out there right now who don't like me. We are still here. Rejection actually doesn't kill us. So, becoming the person who looks at resistance and says, "Oh, I know what you're up to, and I'm gonna push back so that I could become the creative, generative, kind person that I am meant to be." I'm going to revisit this topic from other angles. I think there's a lot of space to talk about empathy when it comes to putting our work out there and being creative. Empathy with self, empathy with others, empathy with circumstances. So I'll probably circle back to this in a while. But I would love to hear from you how this landed with you. This is going to be the first video I post on YouTube as a vlog. If you watched it on YouTube, say something in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. It's just me. I will be reading things that you send in. Jennifer@jenniferaskey.com. If you're curious about positive intelligence, more than happy to talk to you about getting together in a group of people to do that. And I have other resources that I'll revisit in other podcasts. So take good care. and talk to you soon.